Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. It's easy, quick, and it helps us produce new content for you.
So, I used it and ignored her emotional blackmail. She didn't expect that reaction. You know what to do when your wife spends the night flirting and then tells you to use the door. Yes, believe me, what happened next proved I made the right decision. I wondered when the respect had run out. Maybe it was when she introduced me as if I were an extra, or maybe when she kicked me out and thought I would obey with a smile. The answer came quickly, but the impact lasted much longer. It all started at the company barbecue. My wife, Fernanda, had been acting differently for weeks, more distant, always on her phone, absent even when she was present. But that Saturday afternoon, everything became crystal clear. We arrived at the backyard party. Within minutes, she was glued to that guy from her department. Let's call him Raphael, the office heartthrob. I watched as she laughed at his jokes, touched his arm while talking, and leaned in dangerously close when she whispered something in his ear. That shameless body language of "I'm available." Meanwhile, I looked like party decor, standing with 2 drinks in my hand, watching my wife act like she was single. After almost an hour of this scene, I walked over to her. "Hey, ready for a drink?" I held out the cup to mark my presence. She barely looked at me, took the cup, and immediately went back to talking with him. "Oh, this is my husband," she said, as if introducing me to a distant relative. The guy gave me a limp handshake and an arrogant smile. "You know the type, the kind who sees married women as just a different kind of challenge." "Your wife was just telling me about her new project," Raphael commented. "What project?" I asked, genuinely curious, as she hadn't mentioned anything new about work. She was quick to respond. "The marketing campaign for the wellness retreat. I told you about it last week." She hadn't told me, but I let it go and tried to join the conversation. Every time I spoke, she interrupted me or changed the subject. I commented on the music. She rolled her eyes. I suggested we go look at the food. She replied, "We just got here." The last straw was when her colleague Bruno joined us. My wife immediately introduced Raphael by name, praised his achievements, talked about his recent promotion, and then made a vague gesture toward me. "And this is my husband," without saying my name, without mentioning what I did, just my husband, as if I were an accessory. I walked away and went to the other side of the yard. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she was just being sociable. But 30 minutes later, she was still there, still laughing, still touching his arm, still acting like a woman who clearly wasn't wearing a wedding ring. I decided to test something. I went back to her and said calmly, "I'm thinking of leaving. I have an early commitment tomorrow." She looked at me as if I had suggested setting the house on fire. "We just got here. Why don't you get another drink or talk to someone?" "I'd rather talk to my wife," I replied. That's when her mask fell off. The fake smile disappeared. She gave me a look that could cut glass. "Look, I'm having a conversation here. If you're not comfortable with me being sociable, maybe you should think about why you feel that way." The office heartthrob, Raphael, was visibly uncomfortable. Even he could see that this was about to get ugly. "I'm comfortable with you being sociable," I replied. "I'm not comfortable with you flirting." The words hung in the air like a challenge. She straightened up, crossed her arms, and dropped the line that changed everything. "I'm not flirting, I'm being friendly. And if you can't handle that, the door is right there." She pointed to the exit with a defiant smile, clearly expecting me to back down, apologize, or beg. The office heartthrob looked from me to her as if watching a tennis match. A few people around had already stopped their conversations to watch the spectacle. I looked at the door, then at her, and back at the door. "You know what, you're absolutely right." I pulled my car keys from my pocket and started walking. Behind me, I heard her voice. "Wait, where are you going?" But I didn't stop, didn't turn around. I walked straight to that door she herself had pointed to. I got in the car and left. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing there, jaw dropped, next to the heartthrob, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. This was the clearest direction my mind had taken in months. She had given me permission to leave, thinking I would never have the guts to do it. She bluffed, but I wasn't bluffing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was regaining control of my own life. My phone started vibrating before I even got home. The first notification came while I was still driving. Then another, and another. When I pulled into the garage, my phone looked like a lit-up Christmas tree, but I didn't look at it yet. No. I went inside, opened a beer, and flopped onto the couch. The house felt different, quieter, as if I could finally think without someone rolling their eyes at my every word. After about 20 minutes, I picked up the phone. 12 messages, all from her. "What was that? You can't just leave me here. Everyone's asking where you went. This is so embarrassing. Answer the phone. I'm leaving with someone else. We need to talk." The last few messages had a different tone, less anger, more panic. She was starting to realize that my exit wasn't just a dramatic gesture. I had really left the company event, and now she would have to explain why her husband had suddenly disappeared. I didn't reply to any of the messages. An hour later, I heard a car park in front of the house. She probably got a ride with a friend. The front door slammed so hard I thought it would come off its hinges. She stormed into the living room like a hurricane. What the hell is wrong with you? I took a sip of my beer and looked at her calmly. Nothing is wrong. You said the door was right there. I simply used it. You know that's not what I meant. Oh no, because to me it seemed pretty clear. My presence bothered you, so you suggested I leave. I followed your advice. She started pacing back and forth, gesturing wildly. You humiliated me in front of my colleagues. Everyone was asking where you went. I had to make up an excuse that you were feeling unwell. Why didn't you just tell the truth? That you kicked me out, because that would make me look like a terrible wife. I almost laughed. And flirting with your coworker while ignoring your own husband makes you look ... I wasn't flirting. My God, you're so insecure. I was networking, building professional relationships. Something you would understand if you cared even a little about your career. There it was, the personal attack, the attempt to belittle me, to make me feel small. 3 months ago, maybe this would have worked, but sitting there, watching that performance, the only thing I felt was clarity. Networking, I repeated. Is that what we call it now? Yes, and if you can't stand me talking to male colleagues without getting jealous, maybe you need therapy. I got up and went to the kitchen. She followed me, still complaining about my insecurities, and saying I was sabotaging her career. I opened the fridge and got another beer with all the calm in the world. Are you listening to me? She exploded. I am. You're saying that touching another man's arm, laughing at everything he says, and introducing me as my husband is part of your professional networking. I didn't introduce you like that. What's my name? She opened her mouth to answer, but immediately closed it. Silence stretched between us. You introduced him by name. You talked about his promotion, his achievements, and I was just my husband, as if I were some random guy you dragged along because you needed company. That's not what I meant. And when I tried to join the conversation, you cut me off all the time. When I suggested we go look at the food, you ignored me. When I said I wanted to talk to my wife, you told me to go talk to anyone else. Her face started to turn red. You're twisting everything. Oh, really? Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were ashamed of me, like you wished I wasn't there. That's ridiculous. Seriously. Because when I confronted your behavior, you literally pointed to the exit. She was silent for a few seconds. I saw her eyes darting around, looking for a way to turn the situation around. You know what your problem is? She finally said, you don't trust me. A healthy marriage requires trust. You're right, it does. But trust is earned. It's not demanded. So you don't trust me. I stared at her for a long time. Should I? The question hung in the air like smoke. She looked at me and, for the first time all night, she didn't have an immediate answer. How dare you? She whispered. Dare, to what? To ask a reasonable question after watching you act like you're single. I wasn't acting like I was single. Then what would you call it? She threw her hands up. I call it being a normal person who can talk to others without her husband breathing down her neck. Nobody was breathing down your neck. I just wanted to be part of my wife's conversation. You were being controlling. I was being your husband. She gave me a look of pure hatred. Maybe I don't want a husband who acts like this. The words exploded in the room like a bomb. We stood there staring at each other, and it was in that moment that I realized something important. She had just told me exactly how she felt about our marriage. Good to know, I said in a low voice and went upstairs, leaving her in the kitchen with her mouth open. I was in the bedroom for about 10 minutes before I heard her footsteps coming up the stairs. Slow, calculated. She was planning her next move. When she opened the door, her posture had changed. The anger was gone. Now there was something that looked like regret, but I had seen that performance before. Honey, she said softly, closing the door. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that downstairs. I was sitting on the edge of the bed taking off my shoes. I didn't look up. Which part didn't you mean? All of it. I was just angry. You know I don't think straight when I'm like that. So you do want a husband who acts like this. She sat next to me, trying to take my hand. I want you. I want us. I just don't know what got into me today. I pulled my hand away and stood up. What got into you was 3 hours of flirting with another man. It wasn't flirting. Her mask fell for a second before she recomposed herself. I mean, I understand how it might have looked to you, but it wasn't. Right. Just like telling me to leave wasn't really telling me to leave. She moved closer. I was embarrassed. You put me in an uncomfortable situation in front of my colleagues. I put you in an uncomfortable situation by existing, by looking jealous, by making it clear that you ignore me and don't care. I turned to her. You spent the whole night ignoring me. When I tried to join the conversation, you cut me off. When I asked you to introduce me decently, you disrespected me. When I said I was bothered by your behavior, you told me to leave. At what point was I supposed to pretend everything was okay? She was silent for a moment and then tried another approach. You're right, I should have been more careful, but you also need to understand that networking is important for my career. I can't worry about what every interaction might look like to you. No one is asking you to worry about every interaction. I'm asking you not to flirt with other men. I wasn't flirting. You touched his arm. You laughed at everything he said. You leaned in when he whispered something in your ear. You turned your back on me while you talked to him for 2 hours. That's just how I am with people. I'm naturally friendly. Are you that friendly with women? She hesitated. What do you mean? Do you touch female colleagues like you touched him and laugh at their jokes the same way? Do you lean in when they whisper something to you? Another longer silence, this time. That's different. Exactly. It's different. I went to the closet and started changing for bed, and that's exactly the problem. She followed me with her voice starting to rise again. So what are you saying? That I can't talk to men? That I have to ask your permission before I talk to someone? I'm saying that when you're married, you don't act like you're single, that's all. I wasn't acting like I was single. Then what were you acting like? She didn't answer. I grabbed a t-shirt and started changing. She watched me, and I could see the wheels in her head were turning. She was running out of arguments, going into panic mode. Look, she said in a lower voice. Maybe I got carried away. Maybe I was a little too friendly, but it didn't mean anything. You're the man I married. You're the one I came home to today. You came home to yell at me because I left a party that you yourself told me to leave. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. And when you said, maybe I don't want a husband who acts the way you act, did you mean that? She was silent for a long time. I was upset. That's not an answer. No, I didn't mean it. Are you sure? Because in that moment, you seemed pretty convinced. She moved closer, trying to take my hand. I am. I love you. I married you. I want to fix this. I took a step back. Fixing this would imply you recognize what you did wrong, and you don't. I just did. You said you might have gotten carried away, that you might have been too friendly. That is not the same thing as admitting you flirted with another man and then kicked me out. When I confronted you about it, her face started to turn red again. Okay, maybe I flirted a little, but it didn't mean anything. It meant something to me. Maybe you're being too sensitive. And there she was again, her true self, showing up whenever she felt pressured. I wasn't surprised. You know what? I said calmly. Maybe I am being too sensitive. Maybe most husbands wouldn't mind seeing their wives act like that. Maybe most wouldn't even care about being ignored and disrespected all night. Exactly. But I'm not most, and if you want the husband who doesn't care about that kind of thing, then you married the wrong guy. She looked at me, and I saw the exact moment she realized her mistake. She had just admitted that her behavior was normal, which meant that in her view, I was the problem. That's not what I meant, she said quickly. Yes, it was. And that tells me everything I needed to know. I walked past her towards the bathroom. We can't just stop talking about this. This isn't a conversation. You're trying to justify what you did, and I'm explaining why it was wrong. This is a monologue, not a dialogue. I closed the bathroom door, but even with the door shut, I could hear her footsteps pacing the room. When I came out 20 minutes later, she was sitting on the bed with a defeated look. So what happens now? She asked, almost in a whisper. I stared at her for a long moment. Now you decide what kind of wife you want to be, and I decide what kind of husband I'm willing to be. What does that mean? It means things are going to change around here. I got into bed and turned off the light. She sat there in the darkness for a while before finally lying down next to me, but she didn't say anything else, and neither did I the next morning. I woke up to an empty bed. She was already downstairs, probably shaping her own version of what happened at the company barbecue. I could hear her voice on the phone, with that forced, worried tone she used when she wanted to play the victim. I don't know what's gotten into him lately, she was saying. He's so controlling, so.
Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. It's easy, quick, and it helps us produce new content for you.
Jealous. Yesterday he made a huge scene just because I was talking to a coworker. I got dressed in silence and listened from the top of the stairs. She was talking to her sister, Juliana. No, I wasn't flirting. You know me. I'm just friendly, she said, but he acted like I was throwing myself at the guy. It was so embarrassing. I walked down the stairs. As soon as she saw me, she lowered her voice immediately. Look, I have to go. But yeah, I think you might need professional help. She hung up just as I walked into the kitchen. Good morning, she said, forcing a smile. I made coffee. Thanks. I poured myself a cup and sat at the table. She lingered nearby, clearly wanting to start a conversation but not knowing where to begin. I was thinking, she started, maybe we should see a couples therapist, work on these trust issues. Trust issues. Yes, your trust issues. I think it would be good for you to talk to someone and understand why you get so jealous when I am just being sociable. I almost laughed. You want me to go to therapy because you flirted with another man and sent me home? I want us to improve our communication. Yesterday got out of control because we weren't listening to each other. I heard everything you said. You said the door was there, and I left. Her phone vibrated. She looked at it, and her face lit up. Oh, it's my mom, Donna. She's worried about us. You called your mom? I needed to talk to someone. You weren't exactly communicative last night, she replied. Before I could retort, "Hi, Mom. No, everything's fine. We're just working through some things." Even though she went into the living room, I could still hear fragments of the conversation. Her mother's quick, worried voice, and hers. Again, assuming the role of the wronged party. He's been so controlling lately. No, I didn't do anything wrong. I just talked to a coworker. I don't know why he's so insecure. I finished my coffee and headed for the door. As I passed the living room, she covered the phone. "Where are you going?" "To work on some things in the garage." "Don't we need to talk about this? You're already handling it perfectly, calling everyone you know to tell them how irrational I am." I went outside and started organizing tools that didn't even need organizing, but it gave me space to think. She was playing the victim, painting me as a jealous, controlling husband, a classic manipulation tactic, making everyone think that I'm the problem, not her behavior. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, this is Ricardo." Ricardo, my brother-in-law, married to her sister, a nice guy, but easily swayed by family drama. "Hi Ricardo, how are you? Look, I don't want to get involved, but Juliana called me this morning, really upset. She said you guys had a big fight. We had a disagreement about her flirting with a coworker and then sending me home." There was a pause on the other end. "She said you got jealous because she was networking." "Oh, is that what she's calling it now?" "Look, man, I know she can be a bit outgoing, but she's always been like that. It doesn't mean anything. It means something to me. I get it, but maybe you could cut her some slack. She's really upset." I almost hung up right there. "Ricardo, can I ask you something?" "Sure. If your wife spent 3 hours ignoring you at a party, flirting with another guy, and then sent you home when you complained, what would you do?" Another pause, longer this time. I don't know. It's different." "Different how?" "Because she's like this." "No, she's always been friendly. So when she touches other men, ignores her husband, and sends him home, that's just friendliness. But if it were your wife doing it, then it would be a problem." "I'm not saying that." "Yes, you are. You're saying her behavior is acceptable because it's just her way, but you know what? Marriage doesn't work like that. I'm just trying to help." "Then help by staying out of it. This is between my wife and me." I hung up. I went back to messing with tools. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was her father, Mr. Francisco. "We need to talk," he said directly. "About what?" "About how you're treating my daughter." I dropped the wrench. "Exactly how am I treating your daughter? She called me crying this morning. She said you humiliated her in front of her colleagues, and now you're re-giving her the silent treatment." "I'm not giving her the silent treatment. I'm just not interested in hearing justifications for why flirting with other men is acceptable." Flirting. She was being professional, building connections for her career, touching another man and ignoring her own husband all night. "You're exaggerating," he said. "She's always been sociable. It's just her way." "Ah, I see. So her way is to disrespect her own marriage. Her way is to be friendly and outgoing. If you can't handle that, maybe you married the wrong woman." Those words hit me like a punch, not because they hurt, but because they revealed everything about her family. Her behavior was normal, and I was the problem. "You know what?" I said calmly. "Maybe I did marry the wrong woman." The line went silent. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean that I married someone I thought respected me in our marriage, but I was wrong. Now you listen, ... double quotes. No, you listen. Your daughter kicked me out." Literally pointed to the door. "When I complained about her behavior, and now everyone is calling me and treating me like the villain for doing exactly what she suggested. But she didn't want you to actually leave, then she shouldn't have said it." I hung up and turned off my phone. The garage felt peaceful now, with no more calls from people trying to convince me that my wife's behavior was my fault. But I knew this was just the beginning. She had already mobilized her entire support system against me, and they were all convinced that I was the problem. The only question was how far she would go to avoid taking responsibility for what she did. I was about to find out. Later, as I walked into the house, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. My stomach tightened for a second until I saw they were printouts of articles about couples therapy, recommendations for therapists, articles about jealousy in relationships. She had been busy. "I made some calls today," she said without looking at me. "I found 3 therapists who specialize in trust issues and controlling behavior. The controlling behavior doesn't start, I'm trying to save our marriage here." I sat down in front of her. "Saving our marriage by diagnosing me with problems I don't have. You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. You left the event like a tantrum-throwing child. And now you're giving me the silent treatment. Those are problems." I used the door you yourself pointed to. "How is that a problem?" She slammed her hand on the table. "Stop saying that. You know that's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "That you were being irrational. And so you sent your irrational husband out." I was frustrated. I felt disrespected, but apparently your feelings matter more than mine. She picked up one of the papers from the table. This article says that excessive jealousy usually comes from personal insecurities and childhood traumas. Did you find any articles about wives who flirt with other men? I wasn't flirting. Oh, that's right, you were networking. I forgot. She stood up and started pacing back and forth. This is what I'm talking about. You're sarcastic. You dismiss me instead of working on the real problem. And what would the real problem be? Your inability to trust me. And should I trust you? Yes. Even after everything, I know what my intentions were. I leaned back in the chair. Your intentions no longer matter to me. Your actions matter. That's not how a marriage works. Actually, that's exactly how it works. You can't act however you want and then force me to ignore it because it didn't mean anything. She stopped and stared at me. Fine. You want to go the hard way. This is what's going to happen. Either you agree to go to therapy and work on your trust issues, or it's over. It's over for me. I'm tired of accusations, of jealousy, of this control. Tired of walking on eggshells because you can't stand to see me being sociable. You're threatening me. I'm telling you what I need for this marriage to work. I walked over to the kitchen counter and I need a wife who doesn't flirt with other men and then kicks me out when I say it bothers me. That's not what happened. It's exactly what happened. But since you can't admit it, we're stuck. She crossed her arms. So what are you saying? That you're right. One of us has to leave. Her face went pale. What? You said it's over? You said I need to change who I am for this to work. But I'm not going to change. I'm not going to therapy to deal with problems I don't have. And I'm not going to pretend what you did was acceptable. You're not serious. I'm serious. Do you want a divorce? You're the one who said it was over. I'm just agreeing with you. But I didn't mean that. I just wanted you to see the situation more reasonably. Reasonably. You think it's reasonable to demand that I ignore my wife's inappropriate behavior. It wasn't inappropriate. Then, if we need a divorce. The words hung between us. She had the expression of someone who had just been slapped. You can't be serious. Why not? You don't respect me. You don't think what you did was wrong. You spent the day calling everyone to tell them how horrible I am and still threatened to leave me if I didn't go to therapy for problems you invented. Because I love you. Do you really love me? Because yesterday you said maybe you didn't want a husband like me. Today you're threatening me again. Tomorrow, you'll be angry about something else. It's a pattern. She started to cry. You're going to throw away 5 years of marriage because of a silly fight. I'm not the one throwing it away. You are. You threw it away when you chose to flirt with another man instead of acting like my wife. It was a mistake. No, it was a choice. And when I confronted you, you made another choice. You kicked me out. I didn't think you would actually leave. That's the problem. You thought you could treat me however you wanted because I would never have the guts to leave. She was sobbing. Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll change. I swear. Will you really change? Or will you just be more discreet when you flirt? I won't flirt anymore. You still won't admit you were flirting. Okay, I was flirting. Are you happy now? No, I'm not happy. I'm disappointed, and I'm tired. I turned toward the stairs. Behind me, she was crying even louder. Where are you going? To get some things. I'm going to stay somewhere else while we work out the details. What details? The divorce details. You can't just leave. I turned around. You told me the door was there, and I'm still using it. I went upstairs, leaving her crying in the kitchen. I spent the next 3 days at my brother's house. She called all the time, sent messages every few hours, and voice notes that ranged from anger to desperation to attempts at negotiation. This is crazy. You're overreacting. Please, come home. We can fix this. I talked to a lawyer. Do you know how much this will cost us? I'm willing to go to therapy too. We can work on our problems. I didn't reply to any of them. On Thursday, she showed up at my work. My assistant buzzed me on the intercom. Your wife is here. She says it's urgent. I sighed, let her in. She walked into my office with a tired face, deep dark circles under her eyes, and her hair in a messy bun. She sat down in front of my desk uninvited. We have to talk. We already talked. You threatened me by saying that if I didn't go to therapy, it would all be over. I called your bluff. I wasn't bluffing. I was desperate. You weren't listening to me. I heard everything you said. The problem is that you didn't like my answers. She leaned back in her chair. I know I made mistakes. I know I acted wrong. But throwing away our marriage because of one night is crazy. It's not about one night. It's about who you are and who you think I should be. I don't understand. You think I should be the kind of husband who ignores his wife flirting with other men, who doesn't complain when she acts like she is single, and who apologizes when she kicks him out. That's not how it is. It's exactly how it is. And your whole family agrees with you. They all think I'm the problem. They're just protecting me. And who protects me? Who called to check on me? Who cared about how I was treated? Silence. Nobody. Why? Because they all think what you did was normal, and my reaction was extreme. Maybe it was a little extreme for you to leave after I kicked you out to that extreme. You know what I meant? I know exactly what you meant. You meant I should shut up and take it. that I should be grateful for the little attention you give me. That's not true, or is it? So tell me, when was the last time you apologized for something without trying to justify it? When was the last time you admitted you hurt me without saying it was my fault? She opened her mouth and then closed it. I'll wait. Yeah, I don't know. I know, never, because in your head, you never do anything wrong. The problem is always the other person. The one who's too sensitive. So what do you want from me? Nothing. I don't want anything from you. But, double quotes, she started to cry. Please, don't say that. I love you. I know I messed up, but I love you. Love isn't enough. Respect matters, trust matters, and you don't respect me. Of course I respect you. You flirted with another man for 3 hours. While I was there.
Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. It's easy, quick, and it helps us produce new content for you.